Hold on, we're going. I said, what do you mean? He says, oh, we're not stopping. I've spent a lot of time in Japan over the past 20 plus years. About 5 years ago, when I started my YouTube channel, I reached out to a group of guys in Japan who were a little different than the average Japanese guys. They have a saying in Japan, it's called, "The nail that sticks out is hammered back down." Well, that means basically everybody's about the same in Japan. They dress the same, they act the same, they do the same things. There's expected consistency in the Japanese society. But there's some people who like to stand out, and I came across a group of these guys who really like to stand out. They're Lamborghini owners. And they just don't own Lamborghinis and Murcielagos and Aventadors and Gallardos and Huracans, but they put LED lights all over their cars. Strobe lights, LEDs, underlights, big wheels, Forgiatos. I mean, flash is all about. Wherever they go, they stand out. And because they stand out, they're hated in Japan. They're kind of scary to a lot of people. People think they're gangsters. People think they're the outlaws of Japanese society, but they're driving Lamborghinis and Ferraris. And I wanted to meet those guys. So I reached out. I wrote a letter in Japanese one day about 5 years ago to their leader named Morohoshi. Didn't expect I would ever hear back from the guy at all. I just started a channel. I was a small nobody, doing nothing, not known by anybody, but I wrote him a nice letter in Japanese. And within an hour, I had a response. He said, "Next time you're in Japan, Steve, come by, I want to meet you." That was my way into what I call my Japanese Lambo crew, the LED Lambo crew in Japan. And Mr. Morohoshi is their leader and a good friend of mine today. So I showed up in Japan. I had an appointment with Mr. Morohoshi to meet him. He had just bought his brand new 50th anniversary anniversario and had me meet him by a cafe where I met him and a friend of his. And we got together and we decided to start just talking, getting to know each other a little bit before he was going to give me a tour around Tokyo in his anniversario. Jumped into his car. He's a driver. This guy likes to drive and he drives fast. And I wasn't ready for what he was going to put me through that day. I was actually a little bit scared. I come from a muscle car background and I come from more American cars. They make a lot of noise, but they don't go fast. Well, in these little roads in Japan, narrow and windy all over, this guy drives fast. So he took me for a tour of Tokyo that I've never had ended so fast in my life, but it was amazing and we had a great time. And I shook his hand, I said, "Thank you, man." And I said, "I hope to see you again." He says, "We hang out sometimes at some of the parking areas at night, and me and my buddies are there, and if you want to come out at night, it'll be kind of fun." I said, "Okay, no problem." I said, "Maybe I'll come out." So next night, I headed out to one of two major parking areas in Tokyo that's called Tatsumi Parking Area. I didn't know what I was going to find, had a friend drive me out there. We pull in. As we pull in, all I see is lights flashing everywhere, strobe lights, LED lights, Lamborghinis, all the engines are running, parked one after another, all doors up. And I said, "Holy crap. This must be what he was talking about, them hanging out." So I get out of the car, and my initial YouTube setup was a wired microphone and DSLR camera. I said, "Okay, it's freezing cold out. It's the middle of winter there." And I walk up to Mr. Morohoshi. I said, "You remember me?" He says, "Oh, Steve, yeah, I remember you." And gives me a nice interview and everything else. And he has his Diablo at this point. Now, he didn't have the anniversary. He had his Diablo, purple wrapped, light purple with LED lights everywhere on it. And he said to me, he says, "Hey, Steve, this is my crew." And he introduced me to all of his friends, all have Lamborghinis. And he says, "You want to go out for a cruise tonight on the Wangan around Tokyo?" I said, "Hell yeah, I do." He says, "Well, you ride with me." So I jumped in his car, and his whole crew followed him out. And now this is Japan, so there's a leader to things. He's their leader. His crew stays behind. They don't do anything out of place until he does it all. He makes the move, they follow. He says, "We're going here," they follow. That's just how it works in Japan. It's follow the leader, and he is the boss. So we get on the road. They all followed. I told them to drive slow so I can try to film some of it. But what happened tonight was one of the coolest nights I've ever had in my entire life, and one of the best videos I've ever made, almost by default, by chance, but it went viral and it did terrific. So this video was made back in 2014, and that video was then put together and it was entered into the London Motor Film Festival, where it actually won the best internet video, a viral video of 2014. But we drive around Tokyo and we get onto this bridge. It's called the Rainbow Bridge in Tokyo. It's a beautiful lit up, LED bridge. And I'm sitting next to him in his Diablo and he's driving. And all of a sudden, this guy's, not only his cars are blingy, but his hair is blingy, his clothes are blingy, his shoes are blinging, everything's blinging on this guy. He throws open his door. We're doing about 80, 85 miles an hour, probably going over the bridge. He throws open his door, takes his left foot, puts it up, holds it up the door while his shoes are sparkling in the night sky. And we go over this bridge with the door open. And I said, "Oh my God, that was the coolest thing I've ever done." And I didn't realize how cool it was until I put it on video and put that video out. And people to today are still talk about when Morohoshi went over the bridge. I go back to Japan, I see him all the time. His crew comes and meets me when I'm in Japan. They'll usually have a car for me to drive. He's had beautiful Murcielagos. He's had his anniversario. He got in a bad wreck about 6 months ago. He almost died in Japan. He wound up under a truck. The anniversario may never see light again. That car is near loss. But he's alive. He's back. He's like an Iron Man. He was a bodysuit on, and he broke his back and vertebrae and everything. But he's back in action. He bought a Murcielago. He's about to do it with LED lights all over it again, and he invited me back again once his car is done in January at the Tokyo Auto Salon. After that's done, we're going to head out and continue to do our Tokyo Midnight Lambo runs that we've been doing now for a few years now. These guys, who are the LED Lambo guys of today. Also, I'm going to bring Liberty Walk into this. Mr. Kato from Liberty Walk. These guys are all about the same age, my age, about 40, in their late 40s, 50s, maybe up to 60. When they grew up in the 80s, Japan, they go back, their roots are Japanese cars, cutting fenders off of Japanese cars, taking aluminum sheets of whatever trashed out metal they found somewhere, riveting it onto the fender that they just cut, widening the cars out, slamming them down on the ground, and getting on the mountain roads and drifting and doing some of the stuff that's now so popular all around the world, but was started in Japan back in the probably late 70s, 80s, when we were teenagers, when I was a teenager, when these guys were teenagers. Now these guys have grown up. Well, they've grown up by age. They haven't grown up by maturity, but they've got money now. So what's the concept become? It's become taking that old school, their roots of what they grew up doing, building these cars with over fenders and lowering them and doing all this and drifting, and now bringing it into a modern supercar. Liberty Walk does it in his style. Morohoshi and his crew does it in their style. And these styles don't mesh, by the way. Let's put it this way. The guys who don't have LED lights on their cars don't really like the guys with the LED lights on their cars. Nobody likes the guys with the LED lights on their cars except for other people who have LED lights on their cars and kids who say, wow, that is the most amazing thing they've ever seen. And they respect these guys, all these guys, because in Japan society that's so homogenous, a couple guys who stand out. And a lot of Japanese people think they need people like that in Japan who are different. It's not just having a Lambo in Japan or an Aventador. When there's 30 Aventadors around you, but how's yours different? And they individualize these cars. Kato individualizes his cars. He doesn't want to just show up with a Murcielago or a Lamborghini or a Ferrari somewhere. It's got to make a statement. It's got to be good. It's got to sit right. And people who even buy these guys' cars or cars that are modeled after, Liberty Walk, or even Morohoshi's case, he has his own body kit called Fighting Star. People buy them, they all individualize their cars, and they're all very concerned about what their leaders, Mr. Kato or Mr. Morohoshi, think about how their cars look. For instance, I've been with guys before in wide-body Murcielagos, and they're very worried when I'm filming them, they'll stop and they'll get out of the car and say, what are you doing? I said, if the car's too high, Mr. Kato will be mad at me. I said, it's your car, man. He said, no, but Kato, I don't want Kato to sound mad at me. I want the car to look right. I said, no problem. You get the car perfect to where you want it. We'll film it that way. It's a very interesting society. It's very different. But the roots for what they do today all started when they were teenagers, when they didn't have money. Now they got money, so now the cars have just changed. The concept hasn't. So on the topic of police, a couple of interesting stories with the police. Japanese have very good communication systems, especially these guys in these groups. They're very well communicated through their cell phones and other means, but they keep their eyes out where the cops are. We do too. But in Japan, it's a little different because you're all on very controlled highways. There's not a lot of places to get away. And there's some very interesting, unique, unmarked police cars in Japan. In fact, you wouldn't even know it was an unmarked police car because the red light at the top is hidden inside the car until they hit a switch and it pops up through the roof all of a sudden. They come after you in some four-door sedan. Morohoshi and his crew, they're always watching. They always know what's going on. So I was with him one day, and he had a Gallardo Spider, I believe it was, and we were cruising pretty good. And we saw all of a sudden that red light pop up, and I said, hey, I think you got some company. And he says, no worries, it's Steve. He says, hold on, we're going. I said, what do you mean? He says, oh, we're not stopping. And he got on it, and I went on the most craziest ride around Japan I've ever had. I mean, I don't know how fast he was going, 250, 260, 270 kilometers, and these narrow roads, in and out and everything, crazy. His crew then knew what to do. They held that cop. It was like smoking a bandit in the modern day, right? They held the wall, kept the police back. They knew everywhere where cops were going to be up front, where he was going to run into. He got into a place, he U-turned, headed back, and we were okay. But the police are interesting. So they knew who he was. They knew what he was doing. But instead of getting on him, the police have formed an alliance with him. They talk to him now. They call him up. They said, we understand you and your crew are going to go out for a night ride tonight. Do us a favor, stay away from this area and you'll be okay. Do us a favor, stay out of this parking area tonight. There's something going on over here. We're good. And they've developed now respect for some police at the top with some of these guys have got a little mutual understanding. You know what? You guys can have your fun, but let's be in coordination about it. And so far, in the last couple of years, knock on wood, we have not had big problems with the police, and his crew has been pretty cool. And Japan's a small society, so it's very about how you affect other people with your own actions. That's what they think about. For instance, you start your car up here and you start revving the crap out of it. In Japan, you probably got 10,000 people living in close proximity of wherever you may be. You're gonna cause problems. People are gonna get on you about it. But if you're respectful and you think about other people more than you think about yourself, which is a very Japanese way of thinking, you can get along in Japan a little bit better and perhaps form relationships like Morohoshi has with the police, with other people, to make things a little smoother for your crew. After my relationship with Morohoshi started and I started getting more and more into the LED stuff, I got a contact once, 3-4 years ago probably, around that time, from Brian Solomon, who told me he saw the Tokyo Midnight Lambo run and told me that he is the Morohoshi of America. And I had heard some rumors about Brian. I didn't know much about him. I'm from New York originally, but I'd never really known the guy. And I happened to be flying to New York to see my father at the time, and Brian said, listen, if you're going to be in New York, come on out. He had just gotten his, what did he get at that time? That Aventador, not his Roadster, the car right before that, and he was going to do it all. He wanted to do a whole LED thing and all that. So he said, come on out. I want you to see the car. So I drove out early one morning, went out to Long Island, met up with him and Conk, and they were actually doing a live TV spot that morning. So I went with them to Channel 9 or whatever on Long Island. We got there and did this thing, and he had just put LED lights all over his car, and we became very good friends. Really, really good friends. I really like Brian a lot. He's a nice guy. And he said to me, Steve, I want to go to Japan with you one day. Morohoshi and Brian initially met in Italy during the Lamborghini's 50th anniversary Giro event. And they became slightly friendly then because Brian became influenced by the lights and Mr. Morohoshi, even though they couldn't speak a word to each other, they were kind of all into their style, their flashiness. They were unique there. And Brian said to me, I want to go to Japan. So last year, or I think it was last year, we went for Gumball rally. Brian showed up there. I got to Japan. I had an Aventador SV that I was borrowing from a fan of mine that had LED lights all over it. Brian got into town. We met up with him, got him together with the whole Lamborghini crew, Mr. Morohoshi, and we had the best 2 nights going all around Tokyo. Lights on, loud, just loud, crazy. We shut down intersections. We shut down Harajuku. We shut down, we had people, tens of thousands of people just surrounding the cars, looking at it. It was the best time. Became even closer with Brian after that. Brian and Morohoshi became even closer. And I feel like we're this kind of unique little family. Can't all speak together at the same time, but through me, everybody can kind of communicate. And I love those guys. They're great guys. And they've influenced me. I've never was into LED lights, and now I bought a Ferrari, a 458. It's wide body. It's on air suspension, and I just got done putting 16 strobe lights, about 32 feet of LED color-changing tape all over it, engine compartment, everything. My car will light up the West Coast if I put it on full send.
This month's car stories are sponsored by The Ridge. The Ridge makes a line of wallets and bags that are designed to be minimalist and help us just take with us the things we actually need. So check out the link in the description below for a discount and buy one for yourself, or they make great Christmas presents. And be sure to let them know how thankful you are for their support of VinWiki.